Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Saturday, February 14th, 2026. Happy Valentine's Day to anyone who might be listening.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Although I have to say, looking at the state of the world this morning, if you're looking for romance, you might want to look away from the financial markets.
Yeah, it's not exactly wine and roses out there, is it? I mean, depending on where you are, you're either buried under a fit of snow or you're buried under a pile of very concerning earnings reports.
Definitely the latter for us today. We are unpacking a massive, really high-level market intelligence dossier from Manal Mehta. And for those who don't follow Mehta's work, he's not your typical analyst. He doesn't just look at PE ratios or, things like that. He looks at forensic accounting. He looks at multi-INT strategy, which is it's intelligence speak for combining different data streams. And he even dives into deep frontier biology.
Right. Mehta's superpower is seeing the connection between things that look totally unrelated. I mean, he'll take a supply chain disruption in, say, Massachusetts and connect it to a semiconductor policy in Beijing. And, usually he's right.
And today's dossier is, well, it's heavy.
Yeah.
The theme seems to be that the world is splitting apart. It feels increasingly bifurcated, We have technological splits, economic splits, and even biological splits.
Exactly. And the mission for this deep dive is really to decode that volatility. We aren't just looking for stock ticks here. Although, to be fair, there are some actionable plays in the stack.
Oh, for sure.
But we are talking about capital destruction on a scale that is, it's just hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about reputational contagion that is literally vaporizing careers overnight.
And we're going to talk about a weird intersection where high-tech biology meets, of all things, snow crab theft.
Oh, that snow crab story is wild. It really is. It sounds like a joke, but it's actually the perfect case study for why modern logistics are failing so badly right now.
We will get to the crabs, I promise. But we have to start with the big numbers. I mean, the headline of Section 1 in Mehta's dossier is the Great EV Collapse. And I want to pause on the number here because it stopped me cold. $50 billion.
The staggering figure. Just
staggering. That is the combined write-downs related to EV strategies from the big three automakers. That's GM, Ford, and Stellantis. And just to be clear for everyone listening, when we say write down, we aren't talking about money they planned to make and didn't.
Oh, no, not at all.
We are talking about capital that has effectively been torched. Gone.
Right. It's pure capital destruction. It's factories built for cars that nobody wants. It's tooling for batteries that aren't being bought. And it's R&D that is now just sitting on a shelf.
Wow.
I mean, to put $50 billion in perspective, that is the entire GDP of a small European nation. Vanished from the balance sheets of Detroit.
And looking at the charts Mehta included in the dossier, this isn't some slow leak. This is a cliff.
It is a cliff, absolutely. In the fourth quarter alone, we saw a 30% cratering in EV sales. A 30% drop.
30%.
And the dossier points to a very specific a dual trigger event for this. It wasn't just, consumers lost interest. It was a policy shock.
You're talking about the tax credits.
Precisely.
Right.
The $7,500 federal tax credit expired. That was the carrot, right?
Right.
But at the same time, Republican lawmakers eliminated the federal fuel efficiency mandates. And that was the stick. So the government basically removed both the incentive to buy an EV and the penalty for not selling one.
So the artificial floor that was propping up the entire sector just fell out from underneath it?
It completely disintegrated. And without that subsidy, the math, it simply doesn't work for the average consumer. Mehta calls this the affordability vacuum.
Let's dig into that affordability vacuum for a second. Because $7,500 is a lot of money, sure. But if you're buying a $60,000 truck, does losing a $7,000 credit really stop the sale? I mean, is the consumer that sensitive, or is there something else happening here?
It's not just the credit in isolation, You have to look at the total cost of ownership. Let's say 3-4 years ago, you had a subsidized lease, and you probably had interest rates around, 2 or 3%?
Right, very low.
Very low. But today, you lose the subsidy. The sticker price of the vehicle is already higher because raw material costs are up. And you're financing that loan at 7 or even 8%.
So the monthly payment doubles. It has to.
Easily, yeah. Suddenly, that monthly payment jumps from a manageable, say, $600 to $1,100 or $1,200 a month.
Which is a mortgage payment in a lot of parts of this country.
Exactly. And that is the vacuum. The average price of a new vehicle right now is topping $50,000. I mean, who can afford a $50,000 daily driver? The market has completely abandoned a huge swath of the consumer base.
It feels like the automakers spent the last 5 years chasing a ghost. You
Yeah.
know, they were chasing this high-end luxury EV consumer, just assuming that the mass market would eventually catch up or, I guess, be forced to switch.
And the mass market just went on a buyer strike. They just said no, and now you see Detroit in what Mehta describes as a panicked retreat.
A panicked retreat?
Look at Ford. I mean, a year ago, they were talking about plowing billions more into these massive, large EVs, big electric SUVs with 3 rows of seating.
Right.
Now, they've pivoted completely. They're talking about a single low-cost pickup project that they're targeting for 2027. They're just scrapping the rest.
There is a quote here in the dossier that really stood out to me. It's from Mark Reese, who's the president of GM. And honestly, for a C-suite executive to say this on the record is just, it's shocking. He says, "I would kill to have a hybrid electric sedan."
I would kill.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is not the language of a man who is confident in his product roadmap.
Right.
That is a confession of strategic failure, plain and simple.
Because they killed all their sedans. I remember when Ford killed the Fusion and GM killed the Impala, they basically said, nobody wants cars, everyone wants trucks and electric SUVs.
They burned the boats.
Yeah.
They completely stopped making the cars that normal people actually buy because they wanted to chase this subsidized mirage of the all-electric future.
Right.
And now they look across the aisle and they see Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, who never fully abandoned hybrids and they never abandoned sedans. And those companies are just dominating the markets they're cleaning up.
So the foreign rivals are eating their lunch because they stayed practical.
They stayed where the consumer actually was, rather than where the regulators wanted the consumer to be. Toyota took a lot of heat 3 years ago for being slow on EVs.
I remember that.
And now they look like geniuses. And the U.S. automakers are trying to pivot back to internal combustion engines or ICE and hybrids. But you can't just turn a battleship around in a day. Supply chains take years to build.
Well, speaking of supply chains, it's not just the strategy that's messing them up.
No.
The dossier mentions the physical supply chain is hitting them too. There's a note here about a fire at a Novelis plant.
Yes, and this is a specific detail that just highlights how fragile these systems really are. Novelis is a major aluminum supplier. One of their plants had a fire and just went offline.
Okay, fires happen. It's a risk.
Sure, but this one plant was absolutely critical for the production of the Ford F-150. And because that one plant went offline, Ford is now forced to spend an extra $1 billion, billion with a B,
$1 billion
on tariffed imports of aluminum just to keep the production lines running.
Just to keep making the trucks. I mean, that just wipes out the profit margin right there.
Pretty much. So you have a revenue hit from the EV collapse, and at the same time, you have a cost spike from supply chain fragility. It is, as the dossier puts it, a capital destruction engine.
It sounds like policy whiplash, too. You plan for one set of rules, the government changes them, and suddenly you're losing billions of dollars.
That's the big takeaway for any investor listening. The U.S. auto industry is currently suffering from extreme policy whiplash. And it's a brutal lesson, really. You cannot build a long-term business strategy solely on the back of temporary political subsidies. Because when the political winds change, you are left holding the bag.
And holding a lot of unsold batteries. Okay, speaking of brutal lessons and things coming back to haunt you, let's move to Section 2, the Epstein contagion.
This is a heavy section, for sure, but it's absolutely critical to understand if you're looking at corporate governance today.
It is. And what I find fascinating is the timing of all this. I mean, we are in 2026. Jeffrey Epstein has been dead for years. The scandal broke a long, long time ago. But according to this intelligence stack, the market is only now fully pricing in the risk.
That's the key concept Mehta introduces here, shorting reputational risk. For a long time, the market treated a scandal like a bad news cycle. You weather the storm, you issue a vaguely apologetic press release, maybe you make a donation to a charity, and the stock bounces back in a quarter.
Right, the cancel culture eventually moves on to the next target.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
But with the Epstein network, we are seeing something fundamentally different. We are seeing what Mehta calls a terminal event for careers. It's no longer survivable.
The list of names here is striking. You have Catherine Rumler, the top lawyer at Goldman Sachs, resigning. You have Aaron Simpson, the co-founder of Quintessentially, facing lawsuits that threaten the whole company. But the one that really blew my mind is Casey Wasserman.
The talent agent.
He's not just a talent agent. He's a mogul, or he was. He is selling his entire talent agency, the whole thing. And looking at the timeline in the dossier, The trigger wasn't an indictment, it wasn't a conviction, it was just the release of emails linking him to the network.
And look at the reaction. It was instantaneous. It was immediate. The dossier mentions high-profile clients like Chappell Roan and Abby Wambach walking out immediately.
I want to pause on that. Why did they leave so fast? Usually clients wait to see which way the wind is blowing.
Because the risk of association has become completely toxic. If you are a rising pop star like Chappell Roan, you cannot afford to have your brand adjacent to that kind of radioactive material, not even for a second.
Right.
And when the talent leaves a talent agency, the asset value hits zero. I mean, Wasserman had to sell because the business was literally evaporating in real time.
So this creates an absolute nightmare for corporations. Mehta calls it a retroactive due diligence crisis.
That's a polite way of saying corporate panic.
What does that actually look like inside a company? I mean, are they hiring private investigators to read 20-year-old flight logs?
That is literally what is happening. We are seeing general counsels at Fortune 500 companies commissioning what they call deep scrub reports. They are scraping old emails, calendar invites from 2012, expense reports for dinners in New York from 2008.
They're looking for ghosts.
They're looking for landmines. Because look at Wasserman. The second those emails dropped, it was over. If you're a board member, you are terrified that your CEO is sitting on a time bomb that you don't know about. You can't just ask, is our CEO behaving now? You have to ask, who did our CEO have dinner with 15 years ago? Because if that dinner was with Epstein, your stock price could be cut in half tomorrow.
And you can't really claim ignorance anymore, can you? The whole "I didn't know" defense doesn't seem to work.
It doesn't. Not at all. And the dossier draws a fascinating parallel here to the rise in AI scams.
You mean like the romance scams we keep hearing about?
Exactly. There is a massive rise in these AI-powered romance scams where normal people are being duped by digital predators. The public outrage over that is extremely high. People are losing their life savings. And psychologically, the public has zero tolerance for powerful individual CEOs, billionaires, claiming they were duped by a predator like Epstein.
Ah, I see. So if the average grandmother gets no sympathy for losing her savings to an AI scammer, then the billionaire gets no sympathy for accidentally associating with a sex trafficker.
Precisely. The tolerance is evaporated, the public is tired of being scammed themselves, so they have no patience whatsoever for the elites claiming they were tricked. It's a retroactive moral standard that is just purging the C-suite.
That is a really sharp cultural insight. It's not just about the law anymore, it's about the mood of the mob. Okay, let's shift gears from reputation to technology. Section 3. The splinter net.
This is the tech Cold War. And again, we've been hearing about this for years, but the update in 2026 it's definitive.
The thesis here is blunt. It just says China is failing.
It is a bold statement.
But wait a second. China pumped something like $150 billion into this. State-mandated funding. They wanted to build their own semiconductor stack, completely independent of the West. How can you spend $150 billion and fail?
Because you can't bribe physics. You just can't. The dossier breaks this down perfectly. China's hitting a hard wall because they cannot get the tools.
Right.
Specifically, the EUV lithography tools from ASML.
Okay, these are the machines that make the most cutting-edge chips.
They are the most complex machines ever built by human beings.
Yeah.
Seriously. They use mirrors that are so flat. If you scaled one up to the size of Germany, the biggest bump on it would be less than a millimeter high. You cannot just reverse engineer that in a few years. It's impossible.
So without those machines, what is China actually producing?
They're producing chips that are slower, they run hotter, and more importantly, they are incredibly defect-prone. The yields are just terrible.
So if you're a Chinese AI company, the dossier mentioned Zhipu, which is one of their big champions, what do? I mean, you need compute to train your models.
You're in a double bind. The state forces you to use Huawei hardware to show loyalty.
Right.
But the Huawei hardware is inferior. It breaks down. It consumes way too much power. So, quietly, behind the scenes, these companies are burning massive amounts of cash, paying Amazon Web Services or Microsoft for cloud compute.
Wait, so Chinese AI is running on American cloud servers?
A huge chunk of it is, yes.
Yeah.
Which is economically unsustainable. I mean, they are spending more on compute than they earn in revenue. It's a cash bonfire.
And it's a strategic nightmare, isn't it? Because that access to AWS isn't guaranteed.
That's the long choke point strategy that Mehta suggests. The investment play is to own the companies that control the bottlenecks, the Western semiconductor equipment makers, because everyone, everywhere, needs their tools.
And short the dependent.
Right. short the Chinese tech firms that rely on Western hardware. Because that access is not a right, it's a privilege. If tomorrow Washington decides to close the loophole and say, no more AWS for Chinese AI startups, those companies go to zero overnight.
It's like building a skyscraper on land you don't own. The landlord can evict you at any moment.
And in this case, the landlord is the U.S. Department of Commerce.
That is a very precarious position. Okay, talking about precarious positions, I promised we would talk about snow crabs.
I knew you were excited about this one.
I am, because it sounds like a movie plot. Section 4 is supply chain chaos. And usually when we talk supply chain, we talk about, ships stuck in canals. But this is about theft.
It's about the Wild West of logistics. Cargo theft is up 60% year over year. It hit $725 million in losses.
And the specific story here is a truckload of snow crabs stolen in Massachusetts. Value, $325,000.
That is a lot of crab legs.
But it's how they stole it that's scary.
Yeah.
This wasn't two guys in ski masks hot-wiring a truck at a rest stop. This was a cyber-enabled heist. Walk me through how that works.
Okay, so this is where it gets really sophisticated. The criminals are hacking into the email systems of the trucking firms or the distributors. They monitor the dispatch orders. They watch the traffic. They're just sitting there.
So they're lurking in the inbox.
Exactly. And then at the perfect moment, they strike. So picture the dispatcher sitting at the trucking company. They get an email from the distributor. It looks official. Same logo, same font. Maybe the email address is one letter off, an L instead of an I.
A classic spoofing attack.
Right. And the email says, hey, slight change of plans. The freezer in Boston is full. Write this shipment to our overflow warehouse in Providence.
And the driver just follows the new GPS directions?
The driver thinks he's doing his job. He pulls up to the dock in Providence. A team unloads $300,000 of crab legs in 20 minutes, signs a manifest, and waves him off. By the time the real warehouse calls asking where the shipment is, the crabs are long gone.
Why food, though? Why not steal iPhones or PS5s? That seems more valuable.
Traceability. It's all about traceability. If you steal a pallet of iPhones, Apple knows every single serial number. They can brick them remotely. You can't sell them. But snow crabs, you can sell that to restaurants. Cash on the barrelhead, no questions asked.
As the dossier says, the evidence is eaten.
Exactly. It's the perfect crime. But this physical chaos is making the markets incredibly jittery. There's a mention here of C.H. Robinson, the big logistics giant.
Yes, CHRW. This connects to the AI panic we saw recently.
It does. There was a microcap company, and get this, it was formerly a karaoke machine maker of all things.
The karaoke company.
A karaoke company pivoted and issued a press release saying they were getting into AI logistics.
You're kidding me. A karaoke company pivoted to AI trucking.
And the market bought it. Or rather, the market panic sold the competitors. C.H. Robinson's stock took a huge hit because investors thought, oh no, this AI karaoke company is going to disrupt trucking.
That feels completely irrational.
It's hysterical. It shows how fragile the market psychology is right now. Investors are just jumping at shadows. But the expert take here is interesting. Management at C.H. Robinson isn't panicking at all. They authorized a $2 billion share buyback.
So while the rest of the market freaks out, they're buying the dip on their own stock.
Aggressively.
Huh.
They are signaling, we know our business, and a karaoke company with a chatbot isn't going to put us out of business next week. It's a classic value play in a moment of total market insanity.
I love that. While the market chases ghosts, you buy the real assets. Okay, let's go even deeper now. We're moving into the deep science section. This is section 5. And I have to say, some of this stuff, it sounds like it belongs in a sci-fi novel.
This is the frontier. This is where the dossier shifts from macroeconomics to what's happening in the lab. And the first topic is cancer evolution, specifically something called HCDNA.
Extrachromosomal circular DNA.
Right, so let's try to visualize this. Normally, your DNA is packed neatly into chromosomes. You can think of them as the encyclopedias of your cells. They're organized, numbered volumes.
Okay.
But in a massive study of 86,000 cancer genomes, researchers found these little loops of DNA just floating outside the chromosomes.
Like little donuts of DNA.
Exactly. Rogue donuts. And because they aren't bound in the chromosome, they break all the rules of inheritance. When a cell divides, these loops can replicate wildly. You might end up with a cell that has 100 copies of a cancer-driving gene on these little loops.
So the tumor uses these little loops to figure out how to resist drugs.
It's a rapid prototyping engine for the tumor. It's incredible. If you hit the cancer with a drug, the main chromosomes might not have a defense. They evolve slowly, But maybe one of these little XCDNA loops has a mutation that works. That loop replicates 1,000 times, and suddenly the tumor is completely resistant.
That is terrifying. It's like the cancer has a cheat code.
It is terrifying, but knowing about it is a huge breakthrough. The application here is diagnostic. If we can detect these loops early, predict relapse before it actually happens clinically, we can target the cancer much more effectively. It changes the game from wait and see to predict and intercept.
Okay, that's hopeful. The next one is about pancreatic cancer. And this one really helped me understand why that specific cancer is so deadly.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest to treat. And the reason isn't just that the cancer cells themselves are aggressive. It's that the tumor is physically dense. It's protected by what they call a stromal barrier.
The dossier calls it the viscosity problem.
Yes. Think of the tumor as being encased in thick, dry mud or even concrete. You can send in the best soldiers in the world, in this case the chemotherapy drugs, but if they're marching through quicksand, they can't reach the enemy.
So the drug actually works, it just can't get to the target.
Exactly. So the experiment described here is fascinating. They are combining a new drug ADT03, the PDE10 inhibitor, with a matrix-degrading enzyme.
So they're thinning the mud.
They are literally dissolving the barrier. The enzyme breaks down that sticky matrix, making the environment less viscous. And then the drug, ADT030, can actually get in there and kill the cancer cells.
It's a 1-2 punch. You change the battlefield, then you attack the enemy.
Precisely. And that logic changing the battlefield applies to the next breakthrough too, the immortal Hydra.
Hydra vulgaris. This is my favorite part of the stack. This little freshwater creature that basically never dies.
It doesn't age. It can regenerate almost indefinitely. It's amazing.
And we've known about them for a while, but the new research is flipping the script on why they don't die.
This is a massive paradigm shift. For years, the longevity field has been obsessed with anti-aging genes. We look for genes like Clotho or NMPT, things that we think protect us from aging. So the logic was always, if the Hydra is immortal, it must have super versions of these genes.
It must have the Fountain of Youth gene.
Right. But they sequenced it. And guess what? It lacks them.
It doesn't have them.
It doesn't have the standard anti-aging genes. The immortal Hydra actually lacks the genes that its aging cousin, Hydra oligactus, uses to stay alive.
So wait, if it doesn't have the repair genes, how does it stay alive?
That's the twist. We've been thinking about aging as damage control, like a car that gets scratched and dented, and we need a better body shop to fix it. But the Hydra suggests a completely different model.
Which is?
Don't get scratched in the first place. The Hydra uses a completely different metabolic strategy. Its mitochondria, power plants of the cell, run so efficiently that they don't produce the exhaust or the waste products that usually damage cells over time.
So it's not about fixing the car, it's about having a perfect engine that never wears out the chassis.
Exactly. And the implication is huge. We might be looking for the fountain of youth in completely the wrong place. It might not be about taking supplements to boost your anti-aging proteins. It might be about fundamentally altering your metabolism to mimic this Hydra state. It shifts the whole focus from genetics to metabolism.
That is wild. Okay, one more on the science front before we move on. Alzheimer's. This connects to what you said about changing the battlefield with the pancreatic cancer.
Yes, the standard approach to Alzheimer's for decades has been, there is plaque in the brain. Scrub the plaque away.
We've spent billions on drugs that do that, and they barely work.
Correct. So this new research focuses on macrophages, which are the immune cells in the brain. The problem isn't just the plaque, it's that the immune system freaks out when it sees the plaque. It causes inflammation, and that inflammation destroys the blood vessels.
So the body's reaction is actually worse than the plaque itself.
In some ways, yes. The friendly fire is what kills the brain tissue. So the new target is a protein called TRI32. If you target that, you stop the macrophages from attacking the blood vessels. You don't necessarily remove the plaque immediately, but you stop the brain from destroying itself in response to the plaque.
It's damage control.
It is, and it opens up a whole new class of drugs. Instead of plaque removers, we're looking at immune modulators for the brain.
Fascinating. Okay, let's step out of the lab and back into society. Section 6 is societal shifts. And we are seeing the fallout of the AI boom in some very personal ways.
The AI prenup.
I saw the number $250 million in the dossier, and I thought it was a typo.
It is not a typo. That is the compensation package. Some top AI researchers, not CEOs, but researchers, are negotiating right now, $250 million.
That is quarterback money. That is movie star money.
It's nation-state GDP money. And because of this explosion in wealth, what Mehta calls the AI wealth effect, we are seeing a huge surge in prenuptial agreements among young tech workers.
The dossier says 25% of tech workers say AI pay has changed how they split expenses in their relationships.
It's creating a whole new demographic. I mean,
Right.
usually we think of prenups for old tycoons marrying young models, right?
Right.
Now it's 28-year-old coders in San Francisco who are suddenly sitting on $50 million in equity, and they're obsessed with asset protection.
It changes the social dynamic completely. And speaking of changing social dynamics, let's talk about Meta.
The facial recognition story.
Name tag. That's what they're calling it. It's such a friendly name.
It is a friendly name for a feature that a lot of privacy advocates find pretty dystopian. Meta is planning to add facial recognition to their smart glasses. So you look at someone and the glasses tell you who they are, pulling from their Facebook or Instagram profile.
But the timing mentioned in the dossier is cynical, isn't it?
Extremely cynical. The internal memo that's cited explicitly says they are timing the release during a dynamic political environment.
Which is code for while everyone is distracted by chaos.
Exactly. They know civil society groups, privacy watchdogs, and regulators are completely distracted by the election, the DHS shutdown rumors, the economy, so they are sneaking this in while everyone is looking the other way.
It's the bad news dump strategy, but for a product launch.
It is. And the risk here is normalization. Once this is out, once 7 million people are wearing these glasses, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It normalizes persistent public surveillance.
But the trade logic here says, buy Meta.
Because the market doesn't care about privacy. It cares about moats. If Meta pulls this off, they have a killer app that Apple and Google might be too afraid to launch because of the PR blowback. It creates a data monopoly. You trade the privacy nightmare for the stock game.
Brutal, but that's the deep dive way. Okay, Section 7, geopolitics. We've touched on politics, but this is about the machinery of government and how it hits the ticker tape.
First up, the dollar.
We usually think of the dollar as the safe haven, right? If the world is on fire, you buy dollars. That's the rule.
That is the traditional view. But Meta argues the dollar is becoming a risk asset. It is no longer driven just by economics, interest rates, GDP growth. It is now being driven by U.S. political uncertainty.
So the chaos in Washington is actually discounting the currency.
Yes. There is a political risk discount now attached to the greenback. If the government looks like it might shut down, or if policy is completely erratic, foreign investors step back. The dollar just isn't as safe as it used to be.
Well, speaking of shutdowns, the DHS crisis, the Department of Homeland Security is facing a potential shutdown. And the trade idea here is to short Core Civic.
The private prison company.
Right. And looking at the numbers, ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement is their biggest customer. Detainee populations are surging. They're up to 68,000 versus 40,000 a year ago. Normally, more detainees means more money for private prison, right?
On paper, yes. But the politics are toxic. There are reports of poor medical care. There are funding fights in Congress. When budgets get slashed or frozen during a shutdown, the contractors are the very first to get stiffed.
So they do the work but don't get paid.
Exactly. Or they get paid 6 months late. And politically, they make a perfect scapegoat. If you are a politician looking to cut a budget, cutting the check to the private prison company plays well with your base. So even if the volume is up, the risk is much, much higher. It's a trap.
Last geopolitical point. Venezuela. We have the Trump administration greenlighting investment there.
Real politic in action.
And the play is Shell. Shay.
This is a pure geography play. Shell has massive infrastructure in Trinidad,
Which is right next door.
miles away from Venezuela's Dragon gas field.
Yeah.
The dossier points out the math. A short pipeline connection, very low capital expenditure, unlocks about $500 million a year in revenue.
Just by connecting the pipes.
Just by connecting the pipes. While everyone else is arguing about the morality of engaging with Venezuela or worrying about sanctions, Shell is in a position to just turn the tap on. It's a pure infrastructure arbitrage.
It's fascinating. It's another example of the real winning out over the theoretical. The pipeline exists, so it wins. Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground. From the $50 billion hole in Detroit to the microscopic loops of DNA in cancer cells. From stolen crabs in Massachusetts to pipelines in Trinidad.
It is a dizzying stack, for sure.
So let's synthesize this. We started by talking about bifurcation. What is the golden thread tying all this chaos together?
For me, the thread is, it's bifurcation and trust.
Break that down.
Look at every single story we discussed. The world is splitting. You have the Splinternet, China versus the West. You have the auto market splitting EVs for the rich, which failed, versus hybrids for the masses. You have the biological split old anti-aging theories versus new metabolic ones.
And the trust part.
That's the scarcity. Think about it. Why is the reputation market crashing? Because trust in leaders has completely evaporated. Why are we seeing retroactive due diligence? Because we don't trust the past. Why is supply chain theft up? Because we can't trust digital verification anymore.
Even the snow crab heist was a breach of trust, hacking the email to fake an identity.
Exactly. In a world where supply chains are breaking, where chips might be sanctioned, where your CEO might be exposed as a fraud, trust becomes the single most expensive commodity.
That is a powerful way to look at it. If you can't verify it, you can't value it.
And if you can't trust it, you probably shouldn't invest in it. Whether that's a Chinese AI startup dependent on U.S. chips or a private prison dependent on a dysfunctional Congress.
So the ultimate alpha is finding the things that are actually real. The Western chip equipment, the shell pipeline that physically exists, the biology that actually explains the mechanism.
Precisely. In a bifurcated world, bet on the tangible and the verifiable.
I love that. Bet on the tangible.
Yeah.
And maybe keep an eye on your snow crabs.
Definitely keep a lock on the crabs.
And for everyone listening, if you want to see the chemical structures of that viscosity drug or the charts showing the EV sales cliff, check the full market intelligence stack. It is definitely worth the read.
Absolutely. The graphs on the XCNA evolution alone are worth the time.
Thank you for diving in with us. We'll be back next time to decode whatever new chaos the world throws at us.
Until then.
Stay curious and stay safe.